Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on practice ownership. I'm your host, Adam Sierra, and today we're joined by two fantastic panelists who are going to be leading our discussion today. We have Dr. Jen Tabiza, based out of Los Angeles, California, and we have Dr. Joshua Prentice, based out of Dallas, Texas. Welcome, both of you. How you doing?
Great. Thank you for having us.
Doing fantastic. Thanks, Adam.
Perfect. Well, let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's start with both of your guys' backgrounds. We'll actually start with you, Dr. Tabiza, and then we'll hand it off to Dr. Prentice. But I want you to just give an overview of who you are, your history as a practice owner, and where you're at right now with your practice.
Sure. So I have an eye care and a med spa practice here in Los Angeles that I opened up about 8 years ago. I also am a co-founder to a tech company in the eye care industry. So I am up to a lot these days. And yeah, it's been a journey. They've fed each other, learning from the tech company. I've brought it into my med spa and vice versa. So that's a little bit about what I've been up to since I started my career.
Yeah, and so to introduce myself, I'm Josh Prentice. I'm originally from Oklahoma, born and raised there. My wife and I lived there for about 30 years, graduated from the OU College of Dentistry, worked in Oklahoma for about 3 years as an associate before looking for a private practice. I ended up buying a practice out in Bend, Oregon, worked out there for about 7 years. And then my wife and I had 4 children and decided to relocate back closer to family, to be closer to friends and family. So now we're just a little bit north of the Fort Worth airport and just loving life in Texas.
Perfect. Awesome. And Dr. Tabiza, actually, if you could move to the, what was it Carly's saying? If you could move to the side a bit so the name isn't covering your face. So I think move slightly to your left. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Awesome. So let's get into our first question here. So one of the things I want to talk about is the importance of financial planning and budgeting for practice management, right? It's very core to what we do, and making sure your numbers right means that you're keeping yourself right. What are some of the key financial metrics and benchmarks that people need to be monitoring in order to know how their practice is doing? Let's start with you, Dr. Prentice.
Yeah, so number one metric for me is overhead as a business owner. And usually the number one piece of that overhead is your team. So the more, you can train your team to be efficient, the more technology that you can lean on to make that aspect really efficient. That really helps with the office overhead, having a great CPA and accountant on hand so that you can look at metrics from industry standard are also really helpful for making sure that you have a pulse on where your practice is headed.
Perfect. And Jen, anything to add to that?
I agree with everything Dr. Prentice said. To add to that, about once a quarter, I'll go through my overhead expenses and I'll see where I can start to look for better options, right? If I'm, in my med spa, we buy a lot of medical supplies, as we all do in any medical practice. Can I find a better vendor for this one product I'm buying over and over? Can I use the technology to do what I need this extra staff member to do? So about once a quarter, I have a day where I look at everything and I start to analyze where could I possibly reduce my expenses, or maybe even reach out to the vendors and see, are there promos, are there deals, are there offers? Is there a better rate on my anything, internet? So I do that quarterly and I find that I always find a way to save something. It's one of those things like sales is key usually for any business, but expenses are the things we don't want to often look at, but they're worth looking at. And if you can commit to once a quarter, you can actually really improve your business quite a bit.
100% agree. You don't know what you don't know, and having a regular cadence where you're able to check into those things and audit them and actually get them down is super, super important. Love that. On that same vein, what are some strategies that you've both employed to manage cash? Because you have the expenses side, but you also have the revenue and the cash side of things, specifically managing cash flow and optimizing your inbound revenue streams.
You
You
want
can,
me
you can choose whoever wants to go first.
I'll
Go
go.
ahead. You got it.
I watch my cash flow maybe once a week personally. If I see I have a number, right? So if I see it dip below a certain number, I start to create marketing campaigns to bring up sales. So I do always keep a pulse on what's happening financially. And it's interesting, where energy flows is where you sort of create abundance. So sometimes you're like, okay, things are on a downward slope. I need to create something new, a new promotion, a new something. Ask your team members to start booking family members more, reminding them. So there's little ways we can kind of dial it up when we see things kind of on a downward trend. That I always take action on. So I'm constantly taking action on cash flow. It kind of is motivating, to be honest. So I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, and for us, cash flow, one way that we kind of help stabilize it is in the dental industry. Most people are showing up by appointments. So we took a step back. I hired a consultant years ago, and what he taught me and my team was if we block book our day, so we reserve certain appointments throughout the day, we'll make sure that we hit our goals. So if we have a daily goal, we kind of reverse engineer it and we build an ideal schedule. And then we're constantly updating our schedule to make sure that we're filling those blocks. So if we fill those blocks, it makes our cash flow really consistent. And that's where, in my practice, what we've focused on is if we're working on a reduced schedule. So typically most doctors will work 200 days a year. So they're working 4 days a week, taking 2 weeks of vacation. We typically work about 150 days a year. And the way that we're still able to do the same amount of dentistry, if not more, is by block booking our day. So when we block book our day, we also block book the cash flow. So we know what our daily goals are. And it really provides that daily goal helps myself and helps the team kind of see where we're at in the cycle. So we track it monthly. And then we have a reward system based on that. So we know, and the team knows too, if we miss our goal, that's our cash flow is down. If we're up above it, our cash flow is up. And we actually kind of double down. So our goal for the team bonus is actually based off team overhead. So the leaner team we have, the easier it is for them to receive a bonus based on our cash flow. And so that benchmark is set strictly off payroll for the team. So the less team, the easier the bonus, the more team, the more challenging the bonus. And so it kind of gives us a nice checks and balance where we don't recruit more people when our cash flow is down, but when the cash flow is up and we need somebody, everybody understands it.
Well, that's a super, super insightful answer. I love the process that you have and the rewards that are attached to it, because you're factoring in the team and all of the various factors that are going into it. Before you set that system up, I'm really curious, what was your life like before that, and what improved as a result of instituting systems like that?
I think before that, it was, somebody wants an appointment, we're going to give them the appointment that they want at the time they want. And all of a sudden, you can, at the end of the day, you go home and you're like, wow, man, that was a really crazy day. And we felt like we were running around like a sonic car hop, like all day long, just room to room to room. And maybe we didn't get to be as intentional with patients as we wanted. So by being able to step back and make that system, our days are a lot more consistent. We're a lot more intentional. Cash flows more consistent because before we put that in place, back to your question, before we put it in place, we might have one day where we had, a lot of production that day. And the next day we might work twice as hard and have half the production. So it also kind of helps, balance out your energy throughout the week, throughout the day, so that, you become very routine. You do the same things at the same time and you get a very predictable outcome.
Awesome. Thank you for the insight there.
Mm-hmm.
And now, one of the things you touched on, and Dr. Tabiza touched on this too, was marketing specifically, right? And bringing new patients into the practice. It's something we always think about, and it's something we always need to keep doing, because if not, then it's going to catch up to us in the long run. Dr. Tabiza, this is actually something you're an expert in, that you and I have talked about a ton. What are your top practices and your best tactics to both attract and retain patients into your practice?
Well, attract and retain are definitely two different marketing strategies. Retain, I would say, what we do is once we have the patient acquisition, which is the hardest part, we try to keep them engaged with interesting offers that kind of cater to what the people are asking for. So I run a med spa, so of course it's aesthetics. We do a little bit of regenerative medicine too as well in my practice. So everyone comes in filling out a CIQ, which is like a questionnaire of what they're interested in. I'll look at those for the month and they'll actually tally it for me. Like they checked off, okay, a lot of people right now are into weight loss. They want to lose weight. Maybe it's because of the summer coming up, whatever it is. And then I create a marketing campaign based on that, because you just saw, 4 weeks of patients that were really interested in this one thing, or hair loss treatments, whatever it is. So I use the intake forms specifically like from Weave, and we kind of look at, okay, what are they saying they want? And then I create a marketing campaign around it via text and email. So that's how I retain. Attracting is a different beast. You have to have a great reputation. You have to have your reviews. You have to have word of mouth, referral, and incentive for people to come to see you. And so we create some offers for new client acquisition to come in. Usually it could be whether it's a free consultation. There's different offerings. So we kind of A/B test everything. So so that's pretty much how you want to look at it. Is I find I spend a lot more energy on retaining customers versus attracting new, because they're already with you. So now your repeat business is a lot easier to go after than new business. But of course, the approach should always be both. I just spend more time with my existing client base.
Super, super insightful. And the results speak for themselves, right? You've been able to build practices not only in optometry, but also in a med spa, which is fantastic. Dr. Prentice, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you hit it right on the head. Between attracting and retaining, by far, I think a lot of metrics are really geared towards new patients and how much value they bring into a practice. But the longer that I've been in practice, the more attention that you can pay towards retaining existing patients that are in the practice. They'll refer their friends, and word of mouth is the best referral that you can possibly have. So I actually have an in-office marketing team now that is focusing on how can we improve our experiences, how can we overmanage the details, how can we just go above and beyond for the patients that are here. And it's really paying off in terms of the marketing side of bringing in friends and family members that are just like our favorite patients that are already in the practice. I think you're on mute.
Whoops, forgot to turn my mic on there. On that same topic, one of the biggest ways that people are growing their practice right now is digitally. I know that digital can be really intimidating for a lot of people because there's so much that goes into it. Dr. Tabiza, what would you say are like the top, 2 or 3 digital things that a practice needs to be doing in order to be doing both, in order to make sure that their marketing is at least in a great starting place?
Well, don't be intimidated by social media. Social media is just exposing who you are to the public. It's not this cookie cutter thing where you hire a company and they just post for you all the time. It's more about if people want to access you through social media, they want to know who you are, right? So what we do at our practice, as an example, is I tell each team member, you are responsible for creating 1 social media video a week, whether it's a patient that consents to a little, video of like, this is why I'm here today, and a little footage of them getting the procedure, or whether it's the staff member saying, hey, this week we got this on sale, or hey, this week I did this procedure, whatever it might be. You can assign those tasks to your team members. If you feel like you have a team that doesn't have a clue, ask them to look online, just get ideas, be inspired. There's so much great content out there, and everyone's copying each other. It's okay. It's kind of what we do too. We'll look at other videos and we're like, that's a good idea. Let's create that this week. So you create an assignment. I find team members respond really well to assignments. Like, next week, this is due, like homework. It works, versus generally we want to make social media content. That doesn't tend to work. So we do that. We also digitally, as far as everything goes, we have a newsletter that introduces all of our just what we're offering this month. Is there any specials or highlights? I think people do tune in. People are afraid to send newsletters because they figure not everyone wants it. It's okay. They won't read it. They'll delete it. There's people that are interested and are going to read it. And I love to create a lot of content, whether it's via email marketing, text marketing, or even social media, again, because these are our 3 big digital platforms, on just who are we. So I make sure it's like, here's Dr. Segura, and this is why we brought in, exosomes to our practice, right? And so a lot of personal content too, like who are you? Because you're going to attract like-minded people that want you and they want your care. So those are important. You don't want to create cookie cutter. I see that a lot on social media, and it's not going to be an asset to you in any way. You're not going to actually grow from that. So that would be my advice.
100% agree. Authenticity is super important. And I think you hit on a good point there, that people come to see you, right? If they wanted to see just any dentist up the street, then there's a good chance they could probably find somebody that's either closer or, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of times people go out of their way because they heard great reviews about you, or because their friend recommended you, or because they worked with you before. I still go to a dentist that's 50 minutes south of me, but I've been going to them for years and I'm not in any rush to change, right?
Yeah, and I think speaking to that, when we're talking about digital marketing, especially if you step back and you see where AI is kind of going and evolving, and people are learning how to use that, authenticity is going to stand out. We're going to have some attractive campaigns that can be pushed out and can seem kind of friendly and things like that. But there's nothing that substitutes being authentic, being original. Even if it's just grabbing your phone and holding it up and making some video, like Dr. Tabiza said about a team member with a procedure that they did, people just want to feed off that energy. They want to know who you are. They want to know what you're about. And that's what they're looking for, in my experience, when they're going to social, is they just want to feel your energy, kind of feel your vibe, feel what you're about, and learn just a little bit more about you. I think that you also there's a lot of opportunity to piggyback, right? So you can have a newsletter that's about something, and you can kind of focus on that with your market research and with the intake forms and what people are saying. And then you can allow that to kind of drive these, maybe weekly or monthly or whatever social media posts. And just kind of keep your team in tune with what's going on. And again, that just shows, you're in tune as a brand management goes, using consistency between the newsletters and the social media, and just the way that you contact your patients. And that's one thing that I really love about the technology that's available for running a practice like Weave, is you can touch patients based on where they're at, and you can keep your branding consistent, and you can just let patients interact and engage with you the way you'd like, or the way they'd like.
That was the perfect segue. Dr. Prentice was actually a paid actor, everybody. No, I was kidding.
There we
go. That was the last thing I wanted to talk about today, was technology specifically, right? We're in an age where so much of what we do can be simplified and streamlined. And in both of what you talked about, that helped you not only to grow your practice, but to manage it and to make it scalable, and make it so that you're not tied down to this thing, so you can actually have a life, right? So you're not just, working 100 hours a week and burning out like a lot of people are in these industries, right? But so you're actually able to enjoy that lifestyle, because nobody started a business to be married to the business. They started a business to have a lifestyle, right? And to have that freedom and independence that comes with it. So speaking specifically about technology, how do you both leverage and utilize technology in your practice? And what are the long-term implications that that's had for growth at your practice? Let's go ahead and start with Dr. Tabiza, and we'll hand it over to Dr. Prentice.
Oh gosh, I mean, it's such a big question, because there's such a big answer to it. I mean, there's so many nuances of how business used to be run compared to now. Of course, the demands of running business also are higher now, so it's interesting. As you bring on technologies to problem solve what I call mundane tasks, in the eye care world, I co-founded a tech company that makes ordering contacts very easy and simple, for example, because that was a 25-step process for the staff. 25 steps we counted. And that goes for really any sort of like mundane things you're doing. Again, about quarterly, I ask my team, I'm like, what are we doing that's taking up a lot of what you feel like is unnecessary time? It's not useful time. You're not engaging with the patient. You're not on the phone. You're not really helping build the business. And I will look to see if there's a technology that'll streamline that, or can I create a process that includes technology at least a little bit to streamline that? So for example, we had a bottleneck of patients ordering medications. We're not a pharmacy, but we do actually sell certain peptide medications people want. And it was just like calling and this, it was the same as the contact lenses. So we created a digital form they had to fill out as soon as it came out. We printed it out. It was all put in a stack, and 1 hour a day, someone filled those. So it's sometimes simple, but you have to like put your mind with technology and how do I want to use it to be effective. But the best thing is to ask your staff, what are you finding yourself doing that's taking arduous amounts of time? And go out there and look to see what solutions are out there. There usually is at least something you can do to simplify it. And that makes everyone just happier. It just makes everyone feel lighter. We laugh more in the office. We're playful. We're fun because we're not grinding and doing all these, robotic things all day long. So that would be really how like technology has changed my life, and definitely continues to as we move forward. And there's more and more out there.
Yeah, and as far as technology goes and how that influences the office, I kind of see it in two kind of categories, and they do intermingle. But one of them is, how are we interacting as a business? So a lot of the business management things can be automated, and they save a lot of time. Appointment reminders, confirmations, review requests. I think one thing, so that's one aspect is the business management, but then there's also the clinical aspect too, where staying on top of the latest technology in your practice also speaks volumes to the education and the training that you're putting into yourself and your team for your patient's benefit. So for me on the business management side, again, it's looking at like where people are spending time and seeing if there's a better way to do it. I'm a big fan of removing as much as possible and maybe potentially too much, and then having to add something back in. I would rather eliminate as many things as possible and then slowly add things back in. And when we add things back in, say, does this make sense? Is this the best way to do it? And I think that people really like consistency. So that can be good and bad. We can get into habits of doing the same thing the same way because we've always done it that way. But when you step back and question why you're doing it that way, maybe there is a little bit better way to do it. I think patients also want the consistency of how are they, what can they expect? People, make decisions off fear and pain. They don't want fear and they don't want pain. And pain can be, taking off time from work. It can be having to find childcare to come in for an appointment. So they don't want things changed on them last second. They want to be able to rely and count on things. So for us, appointment confirmations, texts and things like that are a way that, the patients know 3 weeks before I'm going to get an email, 2 weeks before I'm going to get a text, like the consistency, so they can always count on it. They don't have to worry about where's that little business card that had the date and had the time and did I put it in my phone? I think patients really appreciate consistent feedback from the business and being able to rely on you and your team to get it done. And then on the clinical side for us, we've looked at every piece of technology, and we know for us as dentists, most people don't prefer to go to the dental office. Nobody prefers to sit in the chair and have their dentistry or have dentistry done. So what can we do to make it a streamlined experience? So for us, we're leaning on technologies like AI review of x-rays to annotate, our x-rays. So we take our x-rays, I can review them, the patient can review them, and we're like, hey, what's that red or yellow spot? Yeah, let's have a conversation about that while we're sitting up and we're not laying back and somebody's in our mouth. And then on the other side of the room, we have, we're doing 3D modeling of everyone's teeth. So when I come in to do an exam, it's done digitally now. So 95% of our exams are sitting upright, looking each other in the eyes, using the information to co-diagnose. And that just helps build trust and confidence. It also helps with our case closure. So just leaning on the technology to automate the business and also deliver the most up-to-date clinical aspect of it.
I loved both of those answers. I love that you both talked about both the internal side with the staff and making things easier for the staff. I actually know one practice that they've automated so much that a lot of times between patients, when it's just them in the practice, there's nobody else there, they'll put on music and have like a dance party in the exam room and like make it super fun. And I love to hear things like that because, you know, there's a lot of heavy stuff that happens in these industries, and you have to constantly keep reminding yourself why you got into this and to keep it fun. And technology helps us to do that, right? By streamlining and offloading the things that kind of make the job tedious and not as fun, right? Yeah. And then we also talked about from the external side too, what that means to the patients and what that means to the people that are coming through our doors, right? Both angles are super, super important. This has been a fantastic conversation with both of you, and I know we could keep going forever, but I did have one last question for you both. What are, you know, looking in 2024, the landscape for practice owners, there's a lot of things going on in the world. There's obviously financial pressures. There are the changing landscapes of what patients want and expect. What are both your advices for fellow practice owners for the rest of 2024? Let's start with you, Dr. Prentice, then we'll finish out with Dr. Tabiza.
I'd say, you know, for practice owners in 2024, stay curious, like keep looking, see what's out there. Try to put yourself just in the shoes of the customer or the client, the patient that's coming into your practice. How do you interact? Like, what is it that you're looking for? And, you know, how can you make things streamlined and easy? And then go look for those services. And thankfully with companies like Weave, you know, there's a lot of services that are rolled into one easy platform that you know, cross speaks with our practice management software, and it's great. So I'd say look for services that streamline your team's everyday experience, your patient's experience, and overall your life.
I mean, I agree with everything Dr. Prentice said. I would say there is also sort of an entrepreneur mindset that a lot of us have that makes us successful that we're not maybe always aware of, which is I ignore the noise a bit. You know, I know there's always a changing climate. It's never gonna stop. It's part of humanity's story. If you look every 100 years, how much the world changes, it's absurd. It's actually a lot to process. So you can take time to think about it and worry about it because it'll help you form new ideas. At the same time, there's a part of me that's just like, put your head down and just keep doing what you're good at and what you're passionate about, because everything's energy. I'm a big energy person. Like, you attract in what you put out. And there's that component of, I find anyone who's really successful, which you can see people that are really successful, there could be a total economic collapse and they're not affected, right? And there's a reason for that. So you got to work on keeping your own energy high. And it kind of feeds into the previous conversation, which is keep that bond with your team, you know, because it's all a family, and then it all feeds outwards. Like, keep it a happy, vibrant, wonderful place. Unless there's a zombie apocalypse, you'll probably be okay. Even if there is a zombie apocalypse, they probably need dental care. So, so you know, there's always a bright side to everything. And you have to keep that mindset, otherwise you'll go crazy owning any business. So.
Absolutely. One thing I might add too in there is just, you know, if you're out somewhere and you see something fun, or you're like, wow, that's unique, the way that you're interacted with at a different business, see if there's an application for that in your own, you know, like, stay curious, like, just, you know, anytime something's fun and exciting, go, hey, how can we implement that?
Yeah.
Well, I think that is a perfect note to end that on. Apply new things and keep your energy high, because you're going to attract what you put out. And I 100% agree with everything you both said. I want to thank both of our panelists for joining us today and taking some time out of their day to educate us. I know I learned a ton, and I'm sure everybody watching this has learned a ton as well. And thank you to everybody who's watching this. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.